Hi everybody, welcome back to my channel, Randall's Journey. Today we're going to be talking about moving to Qatar. In my particular case, I was moving from Canada to Qatar, but what I want to be telling you today is my personal experience and applies to anyone moving from anywhere in the world to Qatar. Back in 2021, I wanted to switch jobs, and luckily enough, a headhunter, an employment agency got in touch with me, find my resume in LinkedIn or my profile, and they sent me an email. Yeah, I never heard of this company. And the first thing that I did, was Google the company. Yeah, it turned out to be legit. And then a few days later, the guy came back to me and said, well, they want to interview you, fine. And luckily enough for me, the person that was interviewing me worked with me before. Yeah, so he saw my resume that went through the list of applicants, and so I was a lucky part. But if that doesn't happen to you, somebody else doesn't recommend you and you don't know anyone there, do your homework. Find, because there's a lot of scammers out there that are offering you jobs going to Qatar, Middle East, and they turn out to be, scammers and so on. So my advice is always Google the company, see that they got a legit website, and so on. So the important thing is that once you go through the interview, and this is with any company in Qatar, yeah. First of all, you need to be aware there's an age limitation. So in Qatar, typically everybody goes on retirement age is 60. You can go or get a job after 60 because they got like a limited number of visas that they award a year. I don't know how many, but keep that in mind, yeah? And secondly, so make sure that once you get the job landed, you sign the contract, you go through your terms and conditions, and you're happy with it. Once you get your visa, get a working visa. Yeah, because if you get a business visa, the issue there is that you won't be able to open a bank account, get a driver's license, even rent an apartment. So you will be staying in a temporary accommodation or in a hotel. So make sure that if you go in there, you got a working permit. The other thing is that once you go into your terms and conditions, some companies, I would say like maybe, like Qatar Airways and some, and by the way, no one is paying me here. Yeah, that's my personal opinion. They offer you the 5 days a week, 2 days off, which typically falls on a Friday and a Saturday. So the working week starts on a Sunday. But other companies, you work 6 days a week. And typically the normal amount of hours, it depends. If you're an employee, it will go to 8. If you're a contractor, like in the case that I went, 10 hours a day, 6 days a week. Yeah, and again, the salary goes according to your passport, unfortunately, but that is the case. So if you're a Westerner or Europe, your rate will be a little bit higher. Forget about the old days on the oil boom that they were having ridiculous rates. But that's the thing. The second part is make sure that if you're working 6 days a week or even 5 days a week, what is the ticket back home? If you work 6 days a week, maybe you got a kind of a roster of 3 months on, 3 months working, 2 weeks off, and the 2 weeks off will be without pay. Now, if you're working 5 days a week, maybe the company will give you a ticket back home in economy class, once a year, but make sure all that is, black and white in your contract. So once you get everything, and again, in my case, I wanted to see, not even once I signed the contract, I wanted to see the working permit, and that is when I resigned from my company here in Canada. And that's my advice, because I've seen cases even where the person signed the contract, the visa has not been given, he has resigned from the job, and then the employer, I heard, cases of friends that they have come back and say, I'm not in Qatar, this has been mostly in other countries in the Middle East, that they have come back and say, oh, by the way, your terms and conditions have changed. Now your salary is less, and the person has to take it because unfortunately that person has resigned the job, and it's a bad luck. Yeah. So do your homework, don't be in a rush, and take your time. Yeah. If they want you, and the job is yours. Once you move, typically most of the companies over there will fly you with Qatar Airways. And again, Qatar Airways is not paying me for this, but it's besides being an excellent airline, I love Qatar Airways. That is, typically they will do that. Okay, regardless of your preference, that is the way they work. The other thing is, once you go, take at least some cash with you the first month, because you will get paid once a month. Okay, so the Qatari law is, the Qatar labor law is that you need to get paid 5 days prior to the end, any time between the end of the month to 5 days. Okay, and in my case, with the company that I went, Anotech, I can, it's a French company. They're pretty good. They used to pay me my full salary around the 26th of each month. I seen cases with colleagues of mine when I was over there that they were used to pay a portion on the 26th, which was basically the living allowance. Yeah, and that's the other part. That typically besides the salary, you will get a decent living allowance, which it will be around the $2,800 for single, and sometimes it goes to $3,200 for family. So that's a ballpark, more or less. And again, depends on the company. Take 1 month cash, okay, with you. Why? Because if you land on the first on the month, you won't be getting paid until maybe the 26th or the first week or so of the following month. And I will explain you why that happens. And that's when you arrive. So as you arrive, don't worry. If you go as a contractor, even as an employee, they tend to help you. Yeah. And I've seen that a lot, that they will help you. In my case, they helped me. In those days where COVID was a little bit different, but it's the same. They will place you on a temporary accommodation, a hotel or something, and that is covered part of your contract for 1 week for you to go and try to find something. But again, don't get worried about it. Stress out, especially if it's the first time being overseas. That once you finish your week, you can move into a temporary residence. There in Doha, you got a lot cheap accommodations like and Hotel. I will put a link there below on the video, so on the description, so you can see it. I mean, again, they're not paying me, but that is the one that most of the expats, when they arrive, they choose a temporary resident. In my case, I lived there for, I think it was for approximately 3 months until I got my feet around. You pass your probation period, which is typically 3 months, and then you get a sense of whether you like it or not, and then you can start moving more into something more permanent. Yeah. And in my next videos, I will be talking about more around in my following parts around the cost of living, housing, neighborhoods. I was single in Doha, but for sure I can talk a little bit about schools based on experience from my friends and so on, and how's your family, your life, your personal life, okay, and long-term resident tips and so on. Once you land, you sort it. The first thing that your employer, and make sure that your employer does this for you, is that you need to have a Q, which is a QID, a Qatar ID. Yeah, basically something like this. Yeah, where it typically gets issued between 1 to 2 weeks. Sometimes they can issue it sooner. Okay, and with that document, it will allow you to open a bank account. Some banks will allow you to open a bank account without the QID with limited transactions enough for your salary to get paid, because your salary needs to get paid in Doha. Then once it gets paid in Doha, the exchange rate is pretty steady with regards to the US dollar, okay? Although I'm Canadian, I work with Canadian dollars, but it's the same. It goes steady. In the Middle East, typically the currencies go steady in accordance to the USD. So once you get your QID, you can open your bank. Your agency will help you to open the bank account temporarily with limited number of transactions. For example, you cannot get a checkbook, okay? And I will explain you why. Once you get your QID, it's easy. The banks are very modern in Doha. You will get your bank card. You will install the app in your phone, and then you can upload a digital copy of your QID into your profile in the bank, and then bam, automatically you can start doing normal banking. Even transfer money in from overseas if you have to. And after that, also one of the first things that you need to do is download the Metrage app. The Metrage app is a government app where you can go in and there you will get stored. If you get a driver's license, it will show the digital part. Your QID, it will show you digital part, your digital ID. If you get a card, it will show the digital registration of the card, insurance, and so on. It's very good, okay? So once a bank allows you to get a checkbook, you need to get a checkbook. Why? Because once you start going into trying to find a more permanent residency or even trying to rent a car, most of the people tend to ask you for checks. Like if you're renting an apartment for 1 year, you need to give 12 checks. So that is why you need to get a checkbook. It's essential. Like you maybe in, I don't know, in Europe, but in Canada, you barely use a checkbook, but that's the way it works. Secondly, make sure that when you issue a check, you got funds. It's not like, for example, like maybe in your country, but at least in Canada, if you issue checks, by any chance you don't have funds, you get returned and you get a charge. In Qatar, it's illegal. Yeah, you can get into a lot of trouble if you issue checks without funds, because it will get you into a lot of unnecessary trouble. It's illegal. You can even go to jail for that. Then the other part is that the agency will help you to get your healthcare card, do the medical checkups. Nowadays, it depends. Some nationalities, you will do the medical checkups once you arrive. And like in my case, I did all the medical checkups when I arrived in order to give me my residency card or the QID. Some you do it up front, like Filipinos, they need to do it up front before leaving Philippines. It all depends on your passport, nationality. Getting a driver's license, there's a limited number of countries, and one of them, I know a couple of them, is United Kingdom and Malaysia, that you can do a straight conversion, meaning you swap. You swap your British license for a Qatari license. The rest, you need to go into extensive training and courses, and I will explain that on my next videos. And then lastly, buying versus renting a car. It all depends. Are you going to be commuting? How long is your commute? Some of the guys that I work with, they decided to rent the car, was better for them. In my case, I decided to buy one. And yeah, so it depends on, how long are you going to be there. If you're going to be more than 2 years, then yeah, maybe it's worthwhile buying a car versus renting, but at the end of the day, it comes to your personal choice. And then I can give you some options on my next videos of how to deal with it, and what are the kind of deals that you can get. Depends on the company that you work on, and so on. Thank you very much, and I hope that this video was useful for you, and stay tuned. I will be posting in the next week or so the second part, which I will go, like I said, more details around the living, cost of living, housing, and so on. And please don't forget to hit the subscribe button. Hey, thanks by the way. Bye.